In the subways with Masai. Masai. What's up, brother? What's up?
Nothing.
How's Brooklyn, man?
Good.
What's your feeling of Brooklyn so far? New York City.
I like it.
You like it? Well, what do you like? Let's talk about what you like.
I like subways the most. They're probably the best part about this place because you don't get those back in Charlotte. I also like the buildings, tall buildings, like the skyscrapers type buildings.
You like the food?
Oh yeah, I like the food I've been eating here better than
In Charlotte?
Yeah.
Like, what have you been eating?
fried dumplings. I can't remember the names of the foods we ate.
You ate something a while ago.
Something green. It was like a plant back at home.
Oh, the callaloo, or you talking about the kale? Center right now, walking through me and my side. They think all this traffic.
I don't know if he died or
So we're going down here to the D train. Ooh. Go ahead.
This way?
This way, yep. Welcome to New York. This is the joint right here.
So, my phone just died, so I can't really log.
What do you think about the train system?
I like the other train better. I feel like it moves faster.
That's because this one's probably going local, the other one's going express. It's like,
What river is this?
this is the Hudson River, I think. We're going over the Manhattan Bridge. Alright, go around, go around.
We have bikes, but we take riders
This is Chinatown. Little Italy's going that way. See it? This says Chinatown. Remember, side we're in Chinatown right now. Come on. Gonna go to visit the ANKH, man. I don't know what this structure is, right? What this building is called. But it's massive. It's the biggest residential structure, I think, in the entire city. Don't you think? This is the view, the top from Canal Street all the way down, all the way around. And this is me and my son, Masai. We are here in Manhattan, right at the crossing Manhattan Bridge. That's what you see behind us right there. And right now we're going to go get ready to talk to Baba HERU, the ANKH man. So let's roll, Masai, let's go. So here we are at the studio of Ptah, B105. Let's go. going to see a pharaoh and his suit. Wow. Looks like we are in a tomb, don't it?
Catacombs or something?
Wow. Wow. Here we go. Right here. My good brother HERU. What's going on,
Look at here, how
family?
you doing, man?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you.
Great
Wow.
Baba HERU.
I like that.
Yes, sir.
That's really neat.
Had to come. Alright, so family, we're inside the beautiful studio of Ptah. Peace. Heads up.
This is TEHUT-NINE.
This is my son Masai.
Hi, Masai.
This
How
is
you
Baba
doing, man?
HERU.
Good.
Good to see you, man. Strong young brother.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Okay, and this is HERU Ptah Wat Amen Ra.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I love it.
Yeah, well, thanks. TEHUT-NINE in the house, y'all. Poet extraordinaire.
Indeed.
Yeah, this, I'll never forget that poem you did talking about, well, I know your son is here. He said, just one sniff, I'll never forget that line.
Mama, you yo, man.
Remember that poem, right?
I know what you're talking about.
I cracked up, man. I said, brother, that was a pain to the divine feminine.
Indeed. Peace and prosperity, family. It's your brother TEHUT-NINE here. This is M9NDtv, where we provoke thought and inspire thinking. Today I have a very powerful brother. I mean, this is the one, the only, the man, Baba HERU. And we're gonna bring him to you live right now. Baba HERU, please introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
I'm HERU ANKH Samaj Sepata, the elder guide of the Shrine of Ptah and the designer-in-chief of the studio of Ptah, where I make some of the most fantastic, I call it joyery, not jewelry, because it gives us joy to reconnect with our ancestral legacy. So that's what I do, and many brothers and sisters are coming into the appreciation of the ancient African culture. They want to connect with the symbols of our ancestors, and so I'm here to serve, and that's what I do.
Okay, well, like any great story, the best place to start is usually at the beginning. So tell us about your beginnings. Are you, first of all, are you American, or were you from the Caribbean? Were you born in the Caribbean? What is your roots?
I'm an African born in the island of Quisqueya. That's Quisqueya. That is the Taino name for the place now miscalled the Dominican Republic, after a Dominican monk who used to burn women on the stake. His name was Domingo de Guzman. And of course, as you know, my Dominican brothers and sisters, many of them are lost in a lack of knowledge and awareness of their African origin, and in denial of their African origin. And there may be many reasons why that has happened, but I remember my mother told me that when I was in her womb, the padre of the parish came and told that she should leave my father because he was too black, he was too dark-skinned. And I guess I suspected my father may have been Haitian, even though he wasn't born in Haiti. But because of the name George with an S, in French it's Georges. So, but in Spanish it's Jorges. And so when I got into this legacy, which my father, who was a Gavi, directed me to this legacy, he said to me that I should follow the track of the name Tutankhamen. And I tell that story over and over again because I have to give credit where credit is due. And my mother, she was she was a rebel against the racism of Trujillo, the Rafael Leonidas de Trujillo, who was a mulatto, but who used to paint his face with white powder because he did not like the idea that his grandmother was Haitian. and he was the one who he presided over the murder of 15,000 Haitians at the Massacre River in the so-called Dominican Republic, in the island of Quisqueya. So I like to identify with my African culture. My father traced to Ethiopia, the Georgis people. The Georgis, of course, which is the origin of what later became Georgia. They just replaced the I with an E, and so that's my heritage. And my mother said, "Well, you know, you have Moorish blood in you." I says, "How is that, Mom?" She says, "Well, your grandmother was from Spain, and you know those Moors took care of every Spanish woman that they met when they invaded and built Granada." So I said, "Well, that may be so, but I identify strictly with the ancient African culture, specifically the Nile Valley culture, because that's the oldest and most effective civilization that has ever been on Earth, for which we have records."
Okay, so Quisqueya, and that's near the Dominican Republic, or
that is the Dominican Republic. That is the Taino name for the what is now called Dominican Republic. It's Quisqueya,
which shares basically the same landmass as Haiti.
At Haiti, that's right.
Okay. Oh wow. So when you were growing up in Quisqueya, what was some of the things that you enjoyed doing as a young boy?
Well, the thing is, I didn't grow up there because I was in my mother's. I was 7 months old when my mother immigrated to Tortola, the British Virgin Islands. That's where my father grew up. That's where his family is from. And so when the padre told her she should leave my father because he was too black, she came home crying and she said to my father, "Jim, let's go to your home." And that's when she left. And I was just 7 months old. So I've never been back there because of the stories that I've heard about it. I never wanted to go there. But I heard it's a beautiful island, but I grew up in Paradise also. I grew up in Tortola and visited many of the islands around there, specifically Virgin Gorda. Beautiful island.
What did you do as a young boy? What were some of the things you enjoyed doing growing up as a young boy?
Well, as a young boy, I had chores since we lived on a farm. You know, literally, we lived on a plantation which my ancestors inherited from the so-called slave master. And I used to milk cows, ride my horse and donkey bareback, you know, run around barefoot, you know, through the greenery. Climbing mango trees, coconut trees, and eating my belly full of mango, and and digging in the ground for my yams and my potato and my cassava and that kind of thing. So I knew how to live off the land and how to cut sugar cane.
So you're very much into like the farm life and everything.
Precisely, just like the Nile Valley Africans was very much into agriculture.
Beautiful. Yeah. What about schooling? What was your education like? Where did you go to school at? What do you remember about going to school? What subjects were your favorite, and what did you what did you want to be?
My favorite subject was always literature. I liked the word, and I liked to read a lot. And my father used to pay me a penny for every line of poetry I could memorize. So to this day, I can spout poetry all day from some of these people like Byron and Shelley and Keats and things like that.
Well, let's get something. Let's see how great your memory is. Let's go.
Yeah, Shakespeare, you know, his soliloquies, you know. I remember how there are some people who have taken Shakespeare's advice when he told them, "Assume a virtue if you have it not." And that's why some people have assumed a label that they have not obtained to. Like I always say, so they like to claim a whiteness that I don't see, but I see more pink, roseo. That's what I see. That's the Latin term for pink. And so I do like poetry of all kind. The poetry of Dylan Thomas, and of course that of many of the African poets, you know, like Dunbar, Paul Laurence Dunbar, also that famous poet. He lived up in Harlem.
Langston Hughes.
Langston Hughes. "I was born here," he said. "Watch Harlem grow from river to river." You know, he said, across the middle of Manhattan, dark tenth of a nation, Chico up in holes of boats from gosh, some of the lines escape me now.
So you
But I
have
remember that.
you had a great memory basically because you were incentivized at an early age.
Precisely.
Now, what about art? Were you interested? Were you an artist? Did you yourself write poetry? Did you draw? Did you paint?
I used
Did
to
you
do a lot
sing?
of drawing, yeah, and singing, yeah, because of course my father was a minister, so I used to have to sing in the church with my sister. We used to duet many of those hymns and things like that. But for some reason, I never got carried away emotionally in the church. And my father always says, "You're a hard rock. Everybody's crying and carrying on and getting saved, and you're not moving." I said, "Well, maybe I'm supposed to do something else, Papa." You know, he said, "Well, I got a job for you." And that's when he gave me the password to Tutankhamun. He told me to study everything I can about the Nile Valley. And that's exactly what I did, and that's what I'm still doing. Because when you come into the Nile Valley culture, it's a lifetime study. You could never get enough. There's so much to learn about, so much to know.
So, the poem. You said you remember the poem now?
Oh yes, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat or crust and sugar over like syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Good morning, Daddy. I was born here, he said, watched Harlem grow to black folks spread from river to river, across the middle of Manhattan, dark 10th of a nation, Chico up in holes of boat. Buses mark New York, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, but most of all to Harlem. Dusky sash across Manhattan. I've seen them come wide-eyed, streaming out of Penn Station, but the trains are late. The gates open, but there are bars at each gate. What happens to a dream deferred? Daddy, ain't you heard? I said to my baby, "Hey, baby, take it slow." "I can't," she said. I can't, I gotta go. A certain amount of traveling in a dream deferred. Baby, 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 all I want is you. You can have me, baby, but my loving days is through. A certain amount of impotence in a dream deferred. From river to river, uptown and down, there's liable to be confusion when a dream gets kicked around. Oh, you talk like they don't kick dreams around downtown. Oh, I suppose they do, but I'm talking about Harlem to you. From river to river, north of the park, like other rivers, the streets are dark. Yellow, red, gold, and brown, chocolate, custard, pie of a town. Dream within a dream, our dream deferred. Good morning, Daddy. Ain't you heard? That's one of the poems I had to memorize.
Wow. What about a poem that you wrote yourself? Did you write any?
Well, I did some raps. I remember, let me see. My African father, Asar, he was murdered and slain, and now his jealous brother Set, he wears the mark of the one you know as Cain. I've come to deliver the words of retribution for the crimes that he has done. I'm HERU, HERU, the ever-coming one. My mother's name is Ust. You may know her as the widow Isis. Well, I am the widow's son now. Get off her. Get off my mama. Get off her. Get out of Africa. I say get off her. Get off my mama. Get off her. Get out of Africa. Shimbalakatim Bombay. Shukalakataka. Hey katim way. Zulakaha kataka takanechim. Sikatikateka take a tick shakem. Roo like a hawk, take a timbo, zoo like a rock, a fake a timbo, who like a talk, a hake a timpe, shika lick a take a rick a timpe, rick a tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, rick a tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Too predators raped Mama with scimitar and sword, said they came into Africa to bring us the word. They jihaded and crusaded for the Holy Grail, found the treasures of Atlantis and put them in jail in the basement of the Paris and London museums, in miles and miles of treasure-filled rooms. African genius lies hidden in European tombs. Return the treasures, return them to my mama. Return the treasures, return them to my mama. Return the treasures, return the treasures, return them to the nation of Africa. Just in case you thought that I forgot to deal with that stinking racist rot, that immoral blob of pink pale presumacy, the one that calls itself white supremacy, pushing apartheid in Pretoria, offending the firstborn of Azania. How can you share power with a thief and a murderer? You should have said no, Nelson Mandela. Let them find a home that matched their attitude of ice on the frosty shores of Antarctica now. Get off her! Get off my mama, get off her. Get out of Africa. That's a little something.
Beautiful, Baba, beautiful. So not only a master craftsman, but a master poet.
Yeah, a little here, there, a little something, something.
Beautiful,
You know,
beautiful.
definitely.
So tell us about the art. Like what, how did that develop? Where did that come from? Like you say you used to draw. Tell us about that.
Well, after my father turned me on to the Nile Valley culture and seeing the beauty of that culture, and seeing that it only stayed alive in the ruins along the Nile, which was raped by so many of those fake conquerors, I decided I'm going to claim this, because since we were dragged over here, none of us know exactly the particular zone that we came from. So I decided I'm going to look for the oldest and longest lasting thing that I can find on African soil to emulate. And then I began to study and read and listen to the lectures of so many of our elders. And I said to myself, I think I'm going to do as my father inspired me to do and follow the Nile Valley culture. And so, being one who liked to draw, but I didn't draw too well, but I discovered that I could sculpt much better than I could draw. I could see the images in the wax as I was carving it, doing my rings and pendants and so on. But I decided that the only way to claim a culture is to create from the inspiration of the culture. And since I found that nobody was really doing this to the level that I'm now doing it, and that in Egypt, those people who conquered that land, who like to pretend that they were the ancient ones, they copy emblems of the culture that is really against their religion. They shouldn't be doing it. It would be called haram in their faith. And so I have to correct many of the errors they make when people go there to get their chenou, which they call cartouche, which is a French word. They misspell so many of the names. They have no respect for the culture. They don't study. They rely on the English Egyptologists to teach them about the culture. So they don't really have a proper understanding of how to render the glyphs in a way that gives the person who wants their name rendered in the glyphs power. As you know, we call it the metuneter, the words of the divine, the Mother Nature language. That's what our ancestors called it.
So at what age did you start with the sculpting and the stuff as far as like the artwork?
I was drawing, making sketches. From the time I was a little boy, I used to do a lot of doodling, but I really started to sculpt when I was on the police force, and that's how I used to pass my time when they put me on punishment posts to keep me out of circulation from teaching the people. That's when I began to really teach myself the art of sculpting in miniature.
Did you have anybody that you looked up to as an artist? Any painters? Anybody that draw? Did you read comic books? Anything like that?
Well, of course, who didn't read comic books when
Yeah.
when I was a boy?
What were some of the comic books you read?
Well, they don't. They're not even in publication
I
now.
know. Well, tell us. That's why we.
Like-
That's why we talking to you. We want to know.
There was in the islands. There was a lot of cowboy stuff going on. A lot of cowboy comic books, The Lone Ranger, and all that stuff like that. And for some reason, the island people were very much into Western music. Western, that's like a Caucasian blues. For some reason we're into that. And of course, calypso. I used to work in the hotels down there, and I once worked in a hotel where this Mighty Sparrow was the calypsonian in residence at the Trade Winds Hotel. That's where now they have the University of the Virgin Islands, the American Virgin Islands, in St. Thomas, where I also lived for part of my life.
You lived in St. Thomas?
St. Thomas in
St. Croix?
I didn't live in St. Croix.
St. Croix is close to St. Thomas.
Yeah, right around the corner. But I lived in St. Thomas, Vestergade number 15B. And I will never forget that address. And yeah, I went to Charlotte Amalie High School. And then when I came to America, I finished up at Wingate High School. I came in my late teens.
Interesting. From high school, you came to this. In high school, you was at Wingate.
Yes.
That means you were here in Brooklyn, in New York.
Yes, sir.
So, what age did you get to New York from St. Thomas?
About 18. I was in my late teens, about 18 years old.
18?
Yeah. But I didn't have any American history, so they told me they wouldn't accept my diploma, so I had to go to take about a year or so in American history from Wingate High School.
Wow. So even at 18, you had to go back to high school?
Yeah, because they said you have to have American history for us to give you a diploma. So I went and I did that, and so I got that. And then I worked in private enterprise. I used to work as a messenger for the Western Union on a bicycle. And that's how I learned. That's how I learned Brooklyn inside and out. Can you imagine in the winter at 5 degrees?
And what time frame are we talking about?
We're talking about in the.
What year was this?
Say in the 50s, late 50s.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a vintage man. I've been around for a long time.
Okay, well that's why we got to get all this knowledge and all this history, because a lot of our encyclopedias are still walking around. A lot of our history is still walking around. A lot of our legends are still living, and we don't take the time. We just kind of get stuck in what we are doing now and not understanding the history that comes from some of these things that make us who we are. And
well, that's a good thing. You just reminded me to mention, as I always do, Dr. Ben, because it was while I was pounding the beat that somebody brought me a tape with his speeches on it, and I said, this man sounds like my father. And then I got the pleasure of meeting him and reading his books. One book, Black Seminarians and Clergy Without a Black Theology. That's in that book he's asked for the return of the ANKH. So I had the pleasure of presenting him with his ANKH in 1980 in Harlem at Church of the Master, January 13th, 1980. And since then, of course, I made ANKH for Alma Numsa John, who was one of the first registered nurses at Harlem Hospital, a black registered nurse, and she always wore the ANKH. And so I gave her the ANKH at the Festival of Isis in Brooklyn in 1981. In 1982, I made one for Dr. John Hendrik Clark, and he got one there. And so I've been doing this for a long time. I made ANKHs for Maulana Karanga, his wife Tiamoya Karanga. Ivan Van Sertima received an ANKH from my hands. Judge Bruce Wright received an ANKH from my hands. Sonny Ababudika Carson, Charlie McIntyre received an ANKH from my hands. Gary Bird from the WLIB, the Global Black Experience, received an ANKH from me. And so many. Susan Taylor, because of her beautiful editorials in Essence magazine, Feeling This, In the Spirit, I think was the name of her
column.
Yeah, of her column. And so many other elders received ANKHs from me over the years. Mm-hmm. And I remember I even gave an ANKH to Queen Afua when she was still at the time with Phil Valentine, great brother. Mm-hmm. And she received an ANKH from me because I saw that she was doing the work of Nebet Het in helping many women to heal their men. And that's a fantastic work that she does. And I had the pleasure later on of marrying her and being with her for about 18 years, and we had a great run together. And out of that came her book, Heal Thyself, which I was an editor in that book, and also her best-selling book, Sacred Woman, A Guide to Healing the Feminine Body, Mind, and Spirit. And so that was a wonderful experience. She's a very disciplined woman. The way she would get up at 4 o'clock every morning and sit on the floor. She always liked to sit on the floor to do her writing. And I would bring her water, you know, as she did her writing. And she really was very disciplined, and she wanted to do this work for the people. Many people don't realize the sacrifices she made, you know, in terms to do the work that she is now doing, that are helping so many women. I know so many women, sometimes we'd be walking and the women would come up there and say, "This is the Heal Thyself baby, my tubes were clogged and I followed your regimen and I got healed, and look at this beautiful baby," you know. So I had a great time in terms of doing the work together with her at the Smile-Tawi Heal Thyself, Know Thyself Center in Brooklyn, where I taught a course called Chemetics 101, entry level of the knowledge of ancient chem that allowed brothers and sisters to at least practice some of the culture. You know, it was not enough for me to read and study. I had to live this. And I found Ma'at to be a very, very, very powerful culture to live by. To live a Ma'atian life, bringing your own body into harmony, because, you know, this sad diet will kill you here in America, all those hot dogs and sodas, all of the icons of American food, hot dogs, burgers, the Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola, 7-Up, all those things that poison you, the excess sugar and all of that. And I became a vegetarian. I think in 1969 I decided to stop eating flesh. And but it was hard to get rid of them chicken wings. They lasted for a long time. I stopped eating fish before I stopped eating chicken wings. I would sit down and eat 2 dozen chicken wings, boy, and you know, I always felt strange because I would see these bones piled up on the plate, and I would think of myself, I say, "You're a barbarian." But I still kept on eating the chicken wings, especially the little part, the little crunchy part at the end of the But I finally let the chicken go, and I became a falcon for Kemet. And I discovered that, of course, falcons, they do eat chickens. They eat doves, too, you know, they eat pigeons. Yeah. And when I was a boy, I used to have my little...
slingshot?
My little slingshot in my back pocket, yep. And we'd go hunting the thrushies and the pigeons. And you know, setting little traps to catch them and roast them for dinner. Oh, I had quite a boyhood. It was a paradise growing up in Tortola. Wow. And every year there was a gut that used to inundate every year, just like the Nile Valley. Mm-hmm. And that's when we would batten the hatches during hurricane season. And that's when my father would tell me stories about the Nile Valley, about King Tut. Because he was a teenager when they found the resting place of King Tut. And he heard the trumpet that they blew over the BBC, the British Broadcasting Company, that they found in his tomb. And he said, "When you hear the trumpet blow, you will know it's the beginning of the end." He said, "This world is going to change." And he said, "You must have something to do with that change. You must help our people to come to knowledge of themselves." And that's what I've been doing.
You and your father seemed like you had a really close relationship.
I would say.
Were you his only son, or did you have brothers?
Oh, no, I had another son, my brother Pa'u.
Sisters? How many brothers and sisters did you have?
3 sisters, 3 elder sisters. My younger sister, she really raised me because I was quite...
Your younger sister?
Yeah, my younger sister.
She raised you?
She was before me. I had 3 sisters older than I was.
Oh, the younger of the 3.
She was the younger one. Carmen is her name. Carmencita, we used to call her. My elder sister is Libya. And then, of course, Gladys and Carmencita. Carmencita, she's the mother of those brothers who used to be in the house party movies.
Oh, okay. Kid and Play?
Full Force. Yeah.
Oh, Full Force?
Full Force. They're my nephews.
Okay, okay.
Bow-Legged Lou, Paul, and Brian, you know, Be Fine. Yeah. And we've always been involved in some kind of art. You know, whether it be singing, whether it be poetry. And even when I was a policeman, I used to read poetry at coffee shops in the village after I got off duty. I would go down reading the poets, poetry. I remember one, Dylan Thomas. Let me see. He did a poem that to me indicated that maybe his soul had a memory of ancient slavery in the slave ships. It was a poem that was called, let me see if I can remember that poem.
No, we got a couple more, Baba. This is an interview. This is an interview. We gotta talk. We gotta get this history, you know, because that's the thing. We don't get the history a lot of times. We die with the history, you know what I mean? And the people who need it, you know, have to go look for it in books where the authors sometimes, you know, are digging through newspaper articles to try to find a whole life. And you can't find a whole life in no newspaper article. So that's tell me about you know, you came here at a young age. You basically, you know, you moved around. It seemed your father you had a close relationship with your dad. What was it like? What was your mom like?
My mother, oh my gosh, that woman, she was such a loving woman. She was a great artist. Like my father, he was a tailor also among his many talents. My father was self-taught, but my mother, she was a seamstress, and she used to do the most fantastic embroidery with a pedal sewing machine. I mean, she used to win prizes at the fairs that they would have, you know, for the various artists in the island. She always won the first prize for her embroidery. And I remember that she was not into the church too much, but she was a very spiritual woman. We saw her almost like a saint, my mother, you know, and she always stood up for me because my father was not easy. My father, like most island men, they were quick with the belt, you know. They spare the rod and spoil the child. You know how to repeat it, right?
Yes, sir.
You know that island life, yeah.
Yes, indeed.
You know, growing up in the islands, anybody could correct you.
Yes.
And then they would tell your parents.
I'm gonna tell your father when he come home.
Yep.
That's all you had to do to get me to straighten up. Your mom was amazing. She was a seamstress.
Oh yes, and she was. She would go from Tortola to St. Thomas, and they would give her 29 days, and she would work for some very wealthy people making their garments. As my father used to work for many of the wealthy men in Tortola. He was an accomplished tailor. But my father had a tailor shop where after school I would have to go and work out fractions on the blackboard. I would have to make buttonholes in the pants and do the overcasting of the inseam and the outseam of the pants. And the jackets, of course, sewing all the buttons on the sleeves. And to this day, I can make a better buttonhole than a machine can, you know, because my father. And of course, he also used to teach how to read and write music. He was also, he used to play the guitar and the violin. He could speak about 3 languages. He spoke French. He used to teach French. He used to teach Spanish, and a smattering of German, but of course English also. And he was self-taught. He never went beyond the 5th grade, but he ended up teaching a lot of the secretaries of the island, learned Gregg shorthand from him. He used to teach shorthand in his tailor shop. And so it was a wonderful thing to be there to hear. Sometimes men would come by and they would have these discussions, and I would be privy to hearing grown-ups talk about so many things of world history. And so it was quite an education, you know, and it was growing up in the islands was not easy. The level of poverty was so great, but the people, the kind of civility that we have for each other. And he did that.
So I mean, I'm seeing, like, in just hearing like this little tidbit of history, I'm seeing a lot of things that has manifested itself, you know, through your personal achievements and some of the things that you've gone on to do. You said you could do a buttonhole better than the machine. That's art. That's high art. You're a teacher just like your dad. You know, you taught. You are independent. You're strong. You're a visionary. You've traveled the world.
Yes, I am.
So you've taken on a lot of the things that your parents used to do, and you've elevated and taken it further. What led you to becoming a policeman? What was that all about?
Very simple. The pay was good. The vacation, the sick pay was fabulous. But I realized after I became a policeman why I was on the police force. I didn't know much about America. I didn't know much about my brothers and sisters here. I wanted to learn and I wanted to be accepted. But because my speech pattern was different, when I spoke English, because we were taught in the British schools down there, you have mainly these teachers, including African teachers who spoke with very clipped English accents. And of course, then we all knew the patois of the island. We could talk that broad talk, you know what I mean? So coming up here to America, speaking proper English, I was saying I was talking white. Then when I spoke island talk, then I was a coconut. So I couldn't get in, and I wanted so much to be in. So by going on the force, I learned more about my brothers and sisters here, because I knew my father used to say that the universal African could be found in New York City. And that's where Marcus Garvey was able to make a dent and in bringing his message of Africa at home and abroad, Africa for Africans at home and abroad. And so I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed walking with my brothers and sisters among them, sharing knowledge, because I like to talk to people. Mm-hmm. And I had to find out why we were being so mistreated here in America by a people who consider themselves civilized. And so that was one of the best places to learn about our condition. I visited thousands of homes in the 20 years I was there, dealt with thousands of different situations. Mm-hmm. So it gave me an insight into the conditions that my sisters and brothers had to deal with here. And automatically I identified with them and did everything I could while I was in the force to help them from getting their heads busted.
Where were you stationed at?
Well, I started in the East Village, and then from there I went to East New York. East New York was my university, because there I was able to really make contact. When I first went there was the Puerto Ricans, the Italians, the Africans, and they were having a lot of wars between them. And so I used to work on Sutter Avenue in East New York. I had a mile-long post, I think it was from Van Sinderen to Skank Avenue, on Sutter Avenue. And let me tell you, Sutter Avenue, I always said, was like Dodge City in those days.
Was that around the time when Brooklyn Dodgers Stadium was in, was still
Ebbetsfield.
around? Ebbetsfield?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That was...
Tell us about that. Because I drove past it recently with my son.
Yeah.
And, of course, now it's residential, a high-rise.
All right.
And
well,
I was telling him that at one point this was a stadium.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was never much into the ball games. When I was a boy, I played cricket, and I used to, in the high school, I loved boxing. And I had the pleasure of meeting my hero, Muhammad Ali, at his camp. I went up there twice.
R.I.P.
Because the friend of mine who introduced me to him, he used to teach how to, horseback riding, and he used to take his second wife, Veronica, teach her how to horseback ride, and that's how I was able to get up there. I played music for him in his bedroom up there, and because, I had a band in the 80s, the Kemet Rising Ensemble.
You see what I'm talking about, Baba? That's what I'm talking about. Nobody would know. This is exclusive stuff y'all getting right here, because nobody else would ever know this stuff. But continue, please. Tell us about this band.
Yes, this band was something else. I learned how to play the guitar. I never learned it formally, but I knew enough about it I used to play the 12-string guitar. I love the sound of a 12-string guitar. And I used to do a lot of my songs were legacy songs, and so I used to all the songs I wrote, we used to play those songs. And of course, all the professional musicians who played with me had to tune their instruments to mine because I didn't know formal music. I just played by ear, you know. And so I remember so many of the songs I used to sing. Thinking about them now it moves me because, you know, it seems as if the people really didn't want to hear those songs, even though we used to get a lot of gigs, and we used to play in colleges and daycare centers. And I remember once I used to play. Dr. Ben used to lecture at Mount Zion Lutheran Church up in Harlem, and they used to have a lecture series called First World Alliance, and I used to go there, and before the question and answer period, they would let me come on. They would never let me speak, but they let me come on and play my guitar and sing my songs. And I used to teach through my songs. You know, that's how I used to be able to get the message across, even though I wasn't allowed to speak.
Interesting.
So, yeah,
that's powerful.
And so there was a bar right down the hill on 145th Street called Sutton's. It was a landmark in Harlem. And I remember we went there for a few weeks or a month, and we ended up staying 3 months. And then the owner kicked us out because she said we were turning her bar into a social club because nobody was buying drinks. We used to have green drinks, you know, spirulina and John Harris. He used to make his navy bean soup. It was a vegetarian bar. We turned it into a vegetarian bar. Mm-hmm. And but everybody used to come there on Saturday nights. I remember once Richie Havens' brother came to check me out because he said, this guy used to sound like his brother. As a matter of fact, I tried to get a contract with Columbia Records, and they turned me down because they said I sounded too much like Richie Havens. And I said, well, wait a minute. Don't the Osmond brothers try to imitate the Jackson 5? How come, you know, they could try to sound like the Jackson 5 and I can't sound like Richie Havens? But I think Richie Havens, his voice was more gritty than my own. I thought that Richie Havens was the Ray Charles of folk music in terms of his.
Not to put you on the spot, but please give us a sample of your voice. Let's hear Baba HERU.
Please.
Let's hear something real short and sweet. Let's go.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do a Hesse for you. I'll do this. Let me do one of the Hesses. Rupumake, 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 rupumake. HERU, the spirit of light, is true of voice. That spirit of light is true of vision. That's what that Hesse, they call it mantra in India, that's what that's saying, you know. So let me see if I can remember some of the, I've written so many songs that don't come right away.
Okay, so you've been in New York for how long? Approximately 40 years, 50 years?
About 56 years.
And in 56 years, you've been a policeman for 20 years. Mm-hmm. How long have you been doing your jewelry?
About 45.
45 years, so that's intermixing with the police work as well. And you were married for 18 years.
Well, no, that was my second marriage.
Oh, so you've been married twice?
Quote. Yes.
Quote. But so basically, but people know of Queen of Four, so we know that you were married. You have children?
Oh yes, I have 3 sons. Everett is my firstborn, followed by Eletan, my secondborn, and then Ptah, my third, and my daughter Kamena, and I have another daughter, Sasheta.
Okay.
Yes, they are all my lovely children. Just like my father, I had 5. My father had 5, and so did I. Yeah.
Like father, like son. And of course, you have grandchildren.
And of course, I have
great grandchildren.
my children by Queen Afua. You know, when I
Okay.
married her, I
Okay.
had 3 children. So in all, I had something to do with bringing up 8 children. You know, and so that was quite an experience. Being
So
a
you've
father.
seen a lot, you've done a lot, you've been many different versions of yourselves, right? Now looking back, 2016, looking back, you know, as far as you can go back to in your memory, what are some of the things that really stand out, like some of the things that you've seen, the transformations, you know?
Well, wow.
This city that has gone through, like, our people. You know.
Gosh, New York City. I used to like New York City. It was, to me, New York City is a big circus, and I found a lot of freedom here. I could be who I want to be here in New York because, like, for instance, I never liked Western dress. Like, I've never owned a pair of jeans. I hate sneakers. Why? I don't know. I think I've already resisted the icons of the culture. You know, the food icons, the dress icons, you know, and I just wanted to be original. My father used to say, there's no distinction in being like everyone else. Be yourself. And so I was always a bit rebellious. Even when I was a policeman, my uniforms were impeccable. I had them tailor-made. I never bought the regular issue. I used to, my garments were military creased, and I was very sharp. I had to be because I was, I think, the second policeman at the time to wear a beard in uniform.
A what?
A beard, hair on my face, because at the time you had to be clean shaven. But after a while I got tired of shaving because I would bust out in bumps, you know, what they call razor bumps.
Mm-hmm.
They have a fancy name for it. They call it pseudofolliculitis barbae. And one day, as we were turning out, being inspected to go out on post, the captain came. He said, "Officer, you are not clean shaven." I said, "I know, sir." He said, "What are you going to do about it?" I said, "Nothing." He said, "Go to my office. I have to write you up." So before you write me up, I went into his office. I said, "Well, before you write me up, maybe you ought to call the chief surgeon so that I can tell him my problem." He says, "What's your problem?" I said, "Well, I break out in pus every time I shave, and I think that hair is more natural than a face full of pus. So I decide I'm not going to shave anymore." So he called the surgeon, and they both laughed together because, you know, they knew each other, you know, on a first name basis. So I went down there and I walked in there. I had practiced the Hippocratic Oath the doctors have to take before they become medical doctors. And one of the things, one of the statements is, "I will do no harm." So I asked the chief surgeon, I said, "By the way, sir, is not the skin the largest organ in the body?" He said, "Yes, it is." I said, "Well, as a doctor, will you ask me to do harm to my skin?" He never answered my question. He called his secretary and he said, "Give this man a profile letter excusing him from ever having to shave." So for 14 years, I walked around with a beard and uniform, and I was persecuted because of it. There would be, I was once had my book signed by an assistant chief inspector who came all the way from Manhattan to sign my book. I couldn't believe it. My book was signed by captains, lieutenants, deputy inspectors. It was incredible, just because of some hair on my face. And then when I would look back in the 1800s, and I would see all those policemen with big beards coming down, looking like ISIL murderers. I said, wow, when did this happen that we had to be so clean shaven, you know? So yeah, it was not easy being who I was, and because they used to consider me too militant, because in those years, you're talking about the 60s, you're at the height of the civil rights movement, and me being aware of my African culture, my African awareness, it wasn't easy. And of course, I was not too popular with some of my fellow workers. Even some of brothers who looked like me could not be seen talking to me because they would be painted with a brush of militancy, so they stayed away from me. So it was very lonely, but I managed to befriend the people that I worked among, and they used to help me a lot. You know, I didn't have to go looking for for criminals, they would point them out to me, and it was easy. My work was easy, and I never had to use my gun on duty or off duty. Give thanks. I used to say a prayer. I think when I did an interview with the New York Times, I told them that, and they printed it. And but that's how I was. I never liked guns. Still don't. Gave them back, and I used them for my job, and that was it. And I used to carry my ANKH over my handcuff case.
Really? Wow.
And then I would get into trouble because of that, and I would be told that's not part of the uniform. But I was adamant. I said, well, as long as I have to carry this tool of death, I'm going to carry this instrument of life. I like the balance, and that's how I walked the streets.
Wow, that is powerful.
So it was quite an experience. And people beat up on cops a lot, and some of them deserve it, but the majority are decent men who only they want to go home to their families every night. And because there was not enough of an effort made to educate all police officers in the conditions of the inner city, some of them came there very frightened, and of course, as a result, were somewhat inhospitable at times. But the majority of these men seemed to like what they did, and the majority of them seemed to want to really be helpful to people. But like in anything else, you have your racists everywhere, and they are part of the fabric of America, and so policemen are no different. And I would tell them, I would say, well, if you're going to get on the cops, then you have to get on the educators in the schools, because they kill the brains of our children, many of them. You have to get to the emergency rooms where more people are killed every day than cops kill people. You have to deal with the whole ball of wax of a society that in so many cases mistreat people. Many of them are into the unmaking of human beings. I suppose it comes from a lack of a kind of inferiority complex. When you don't feel too good about yourself, you always need to have somebody to look down upon in order for you to feel that you are elevated. And so it seems as if this country was in the habit of trying to keep certain people down so they could feel that they were a notch above. I remember seeing that movie on the Black Wall Street, where this man was burning down these middle-class black folks' homes, and he was saying, well, he's got a piano, I ain't got no piano, so I'm gonna burn his house down. I said, damn.
Yeah, that's in Rosewood.
Yeah, is it in Rosewood?
Rosewood,
yeah.
Yes.
I said, look at this. So I realized that there are people who, because they feel so small in themselves, they try to make others feel smaller so they can feel elevated. I call them wannabes, and they want to be white, and they're not.
Let's move now into that very, very powerful
You said this
instrument.
was going to be a little interview.
Yes.
This is an epic, brother.
This is a classic. This is a classic. So let's talk about the ANKH. Before we even, you've kind of mentioned that Dr. Ben with a book of his that he called for the resurgence of the ANKH. Mm-hmm. Is that what kind of triggered your motivation to?
That's definitely. When as a craftsman, I said, well, I always only wanted to do things that had meaning and significance, because I feel that this body, this is the temple of the Most High, mm-hmm. who's the mother and father of all creation. And anything you put on your body should have meaning and significance to keep you grounded in the positive things of life. And so I noticed that our ancestors only made things that had meaning. And so from day one, I wanted to create things that would uplift us, And so what better than the ANKH? People speak of religion, but you can't have religion without life. And this is a word for life in the oldest language for which we have records on earth.
Please go into the explanation of the different aspects of the ANKH.
The metuneter. Well, again, look. This represents the female, the womb. The crossbar represents the children, the product of the womb. And this is the one who sends the seed to the womb, the man. In our legacy, heaven is a woman. Dr. Ben, of course, says that heaven is at a certain part of her anatomy, but I think that all of her is heaven. And in our legacy, heaven is called Nut. Here she is. This is Nut. She arcs over the heavens, and her body is filled with stars. And it said that we are stars from the body of a divine cosmic mother, Nut. This crossbar here represents Shu, the atmosphere that separates the heavens from the earth. And this here is known as Geb, the earth principle. So in our legacy, earth is masculine, heaven is feminine, and of course the atmosphere is spirit. Okay? It also symbolizes, here we have the earth. Water rises from the surface of the earth up into the clouds, falling back on the earth as rain to bring the seed of vegetation, which is food, the staff of life out of the ground. So however you look at Ankh, it means life, eternal, never-ending. When the Romans conquered the Nile Valley Africans, the edict of the Emperor Theodosius and also later Justinian, they closed the temples dedicated to the Divine Mother, Set, known as today as Isis in the Greek vernacular, and they forbid the Ankh to be the symbol of early Christianity, as the Ethiopians had made the Ankh. But because they were patriarchal order, they could not have a woman, the sign of the feminine, on the top of creation. So they put a little boy's organ on the top, and to create what they call the modern cross. The fact is that Romans never crucified anybody on a cross like that. It was just a T. Okay? But of course, as you can see, here's the male organ, and here's a little boy's organ. And we see the results in the child molestation that is perpetrated in the Roman Church. You see? So we worship a divine that's both mother and father of all creation. To worship, being one of African ascent, to worship a deity that's only male, where you only speak of him, he did this, you pray to him, you never pray to her, when your mother is the one who brought you here. And then she is not allowed to conduct Mass on Sunday. What? You say, Hail Mary, Mother of God, but she should shut her mouth on Sunday morning? I beg your pardon. But you don't want to shut up her womb, do you? You want her to continue to deliver those babies that you can send to war to kill and be killed, don't you? Okay, Hail Mary? Right. So this is the reason why we must return to an emblem of life that honors the mother and the father and the children, the whole family. And that is why I'm so into life, because without life you cannot even argue about your differences in religion. So I follow a spiritual path, because spirituality allows you to embrace the world, allow you to embrace nature and all that's in the world. It's only people who hate divinity that hate people because of their complexion. I think they're just jealous because they have none. But the thing is, the Most High made everyone of all different complexions, the human rainbow, I call it. And we should respect each other for what the Most High has made us to be, instead of fighting each other over differences of skin shade. And I always say, and I'm going to say, there are no white people in the world, and there are no black people in the world. I'm an artist. When I mix white and black, I get gray. I've never seen a gray person in my life. So it's a lie. Another thing, I would say that so-called white people, I will refer to them as roseoderms. Roseo meaning pink, derm meaning skin. so-called black people I would call chemetioderms. Chem is the oldest word for dark in English, in the Metu-Neter, and derm is a Latin word. See, I like to join ancient Metu-Neter with some present-day terms to create what I call a Smai-Tawi language, unity of the East and the West, you see. And I think that's a smart thing to do, because you want to honor your ancient ancestors, but of course you also want to respect your presence here in the West, because as Ivan van Sertima said, we were here before Columbus.
Well, let's see some of the stuff that you make as a master jeweler. If you have a few moments, you could just show us some of the stuff.
Well, let me see. For instance, let me begin. Here is the ancient Tibetan symbol for Om, holy peace.
Om.
You know, and notice on the Om, I put ANKH Seneb. So what I have done is these two ancient cultures, I've married them, the ancient Kemetic culture together with the Tibetan culture, okay? Mm-hmm. So I like to blend ancient cultures, okay? Here, look at this. This is the ring of Smai Kawi, the blossom of the papyrus and the blossom of the lotus. These were the two emblems of the unity of the two regions, Nubia with Kush, now called Ethiopia, and Sudan, together with Kemet, now miscalled Egypt in the Greek vernacular. So these two blossoms were on every throne that the ancestors sat on. So when you wear a ring like this, it reminds you of unity. And the first area of unity you should seek to obtain is unity within yourself. Okay. I spoke of my daughter Kamena, right? And here, this is her mother. I sculpted her mother's face, and you see her mother's wearing a crown of gold, and her face is done in rose gold, and she wears braids. And I think I had it knotted with an ankh, I'm sure, and so see, again.
So a very personal touch to the jewelry.
Oh yeah.
And
look at this ring here. This is known as the ring of the temple. See? It's made with the same slanting facade of the temple, and inside it says ANKH Seneb, life, strength, and health, and it has the wings of HERU Behutet. In Kemet, above the doorways of all the temples, there are these wings, which they say protect the temple from intruders.
That, like this wing right here over, are we looking at?
Yeah, these are the wings of Mut, the wings of the Divine Mother, the sacred symbol. Here's a little pendant of Africa, the outline of Africa with the pendant of Sankofa, which means go back and fetch it. A lot of our brothers are wearing the baseball cap now, and the whole point of baseball is to make it to home base. So for me, your home base should be Africa, baseball star. Okay.
So these pieces, Baba, they are where do the inspiration come from? Is it just something that pops in your head? Does somebody come up with that concept?
Everything that I do was given by the ancestors. I just continue a process that was interrupted by barbarians. Okay, and now of course they take it and they put it in all their museums, and they try to deny the people who created these beautiful things. You see?
So these are pieces that people can wear as cultural
emblems of the culture.
The culture.
For instance, you look at this pendant here. You know where I got this pendant from? From the book of Coming Forth Today from Night. It shows the symbol of the Ankh, life, with the symbol of the Ka, the upraised hands, the same symbol they use for...
Yes, indeed. Like don't shoot.
Yeah, police don't
Hands
shoot.
Up, don't shoot.
Right, and it's holding the symbol of Ra, higher consciousness. Okay, upholding higher consciousness.
Beautiful.
And this is taken from the Reu Empertum Ruinger, the so-called Egyptian Book of the Dead. They give it that title to scare you away from.
Yeah. So you also have stuff that people can wear for if they want to get engaged, if someone want to get married.
That's one of my favorite things, because I always say that the people who dragged us over here split up our families. Now we're putting our families together. We have to go to them for the emblem of culture. I don't think it makes sense. So I create wedding bands and engagement rings, and
These are some examples right here.
oh, definitely. For instance, look at this. This is being held up by little ankhs on all four sides, and look at these ankhs on the side here. Okay, this is an engagement ring. All right.
Wow, beautiful. There's a host of others right there.
Oh, definitely.
And these are the male bands in the back.
Yes, there's some wedding bands in the back there.
And these are engagement rings for the ladies. They're more on this side.
Right. This is a two-part ring. This can be worn as the engagement ring, and on the day of marriage, you can put it inside the wedding band. See, so that fits.
Is that for a man or a woman?
This can be worn by a woman. I also have man engagement rings because man engagement ring, because
ladies are proposing nowadays.
Oh well, that too. But you see, brothers give the women the ring, and they walk around like they're not committed. So I decided, hey, you're not going to get away with that. So I decided to make what we call the man engagement ring. So on and on. I mean, I can speak all day about these emblems of the culture. And I can show you some more over here. Look at this. Look at it up close. You see the eyes there?
Yes.
The eyes of HERU. So sometimes I make this, and the husband would get the engagement ring that comes out for his wife, right? And I would put his birthstone inside of the eyes, so that wherever she goes, his protective eyes are there with her. Okay? And this is the wedding band held together by the sign of, Sankofa on the side. And so this goes in here just like that. And in the bottom here we have a little peg, and usually I put the husband's birthstone here
in the peg,
so that when the wife closes her hand, she's got it right there.
She can feel it. She can hold on to it.
So I like to put meaning in everything I do, so that people would feel closer to each other, even in the emblems of the culture. So I mean, there's so many expressions of our culture. You can just go up.
And where can people find these? Or do you have them online?
Yep, go to studioofptah.com. And the email is info@soptah.com. And they can call me at 212-343-9706. 212-343-9706. But go to the website again, and there you'll find about 0.5% of all the works I've done. If you want, you can visit my studio. It's like a little museum where you can really see the pieces close up.
Indeed. And where is your studio located?
The studio is 55-59 Christie, suite number B105, downstairs on the foundation. That's where Ptah is, on the foundation. That's right.
And Ptah, matter of fact, I want you to explain Ptah.
Here's Ptah over. Here's a picture of Ptah over here.
Yes.
This is Ptah. This is where they copied the Oscar from. Okay. Of course, they'll never tell you where they got it from. They like to pretend that they originated stuff.
Isn't it funny though how the Oscar sounds a little bit like Osar?
I know. right?
I mean, is it based off? Is the actual Oscar? Do you know if it's based off somebody's name or did they just come up with that
I'm
name?
not sure, but of course, Asa also has a pose just like that too. Asa is shown, you know, in what they call the Sahufied pose. It's the wrappings showing that he's bound on the earth plane, but his consciousness is of the higher cosmic consciousness.
And who was Ptah exactly in the pantheon?
Ptah is a patron of all craftspeople, of all architects, all builders, all craftspeople that were consecrated to Ptah. His mate, Sekhmet, was consecrated to all the healers were consecrated to Sekhmet. You see, in our legacy, in all the temples, there was the feminine and masculine principle side by side, and they always had a third, a child. So it was the Holy Mother, Holy Father, and Holy Child. Okay? Who could be male or female, not just a boy.
Any last words of wisdom you want to give about yourself, about what you do? Let's go.
The Ankh is here. That should be plain to see. Came down on starship Potolo to New York City. My cosmic star mother is HERU. My cosmic solar father Asara Atemu. I transform myself as best Kepera. Rose up like a hill in the name of Ptah, the architect of heaven who fashioned the stars. I fought a panther pink dragon on the plains of Mars. I dropped comedic science behind the prison bars. I'm the Ankh-Man. Hotep.
Hotep. Hotep. Hotep.
This is Baba HERU. I want to tell you, I wish that you would subscribe to M9NDtv. That's Mind with a 9. For TEHUT-NINE is the host of M9NDtv. Check it out.